So today we're talking about India, a nation that isn't just dealing with one single challenge, but a whole series of crises that are all happening at once. We're going to break down how these issues, which might seem totally separate, like air quality and job growth, are actually deeply connected and putting an incredible amount of pressure on the entire country.
All right, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on this, you first have to see all the different fronts where India is feeling the pressure. It's coming from all sides, from inside the country and from outside its borders.
And this really gives you a snapshot of just how big the challenge is. You've got these huge farmer protests that are shaking up the agricultural heartland. You've got critical energy shortages that threaten to turn the lights off. The air pollution in cities is frankly at a crisis point. And then on top of all that, you have simmering tensions at the border and this weird economic situation, a boom that isn't actually creating enough jobs for young people. Any one of these would be a massive headache, right? But put them all together and you've got a genuine perfect storm.
So that's the big picture. But let's bring this down from the 30,000-foot view to what's happening on the ground. Because these pressures aren't just abstract ideas in a report. They have a very, very real impact on the lives of millions of people every single day. This quote from Devinder Sharma, an agricultural economist, just nails it. For a farmer, when something happens halfway around the world that messes with fertilizer supplies, that's not some distant news headline. No, that's a direct threat to their crops, to their income, to their family's future. And that uncertainty, well, it creates a very real and understandable anxiety.
And here's the other side of that human cost. Just look at this number. Over 200,000 people. That's how many sought help for serious breathing problems in just a few of Delhi's main hospitals in a couple of years. This isn't just a statistic, It's a full-blown public health crisis, and it's being fueled by the toxic air people are forced to breathe.
So you have to ask, right? With all this weight, all this pressure, how are the systems that are supposed to manage the country actually holding up? Are they proving to be resilient, or are we starting to see some serious cracks appear?
Well, let's start with the environmental response. To deal with the crazy pollution levels, authorities have a system in place called GRAP. It stands for Graded Response Action Plan. Basically, it's a playbook of emergency measures that are supposed to kick in automatically as the air quality gets worse and worse. And this chart here breaks it down perfectly. You can see exactly how the response is meant to ramp up. It starts at stage 1 when the air is poor, basic stuff like controlling construction dust. But by the time it gets all the way up to stage 4 or severe plus, we're talking about drastic measures, banning trucks from entering the city, even closing schools and offices. It's a system designed to react, step by step, to a crisis that's spiraling out of control. Now, this slide gets at a huge paradox, a real contradiction at the very heart of India's economic system. On the one hand, you hear all the headlines, fastest growing major economy in the world. But then you look at the other side of the coin and you see this chronic, ongoing failure to create enough good, formal jobs for the millions of young people who need them. It's this strange story of growth without opportunity. And of course, what's supposed to power all that economic growth? The energy grid. But here's the problem. It is stretched to its absolute limit. The gap between how much power people need and how much is available is getting wider. The whole system is being pushed to the brink, and experts are warning that without major upgrades, the lights could literally go out. Okay, and this is where things get really intense, because none of these problems are happening in their own little bubbles. They're all running on a collision course, crashing into each other and setting off these incredibly damaging chain reactions. So, picture this. It can all start with something happening thousands of miles away from India, a conflict that seems completely unrelated to daily life there. But then, that conflict sends shockwaves rippling through global supply chains. All of a sudden, it becomes harder and more expensive to get essential things like natural gas and, crucially, fertilizer, the very stuff India's farms depend on. And just like that, a global event becomes a local crisis. It directly threatens how much food can be grown, which in turn puts the country's entire food supply at risk. Which leads directly to this kind of chilling warning from experts. They see the straight line connecting a distant war to the very real possibility of hunger back home. But here's the kicker. This isn't happening in a vacuum. At the exact same time all this is going on, the country is facing enormous pressure from the inside. We're talking about a nationwide strike of around 300 million people. Many of them, the same farmers getting hit by those global shortages, protesting new laws they feel threaten their entire way of life. And as if that weren't enough, you have to pile one more thing on top. All of this is happening
while the country is also managing these long-running, volatile security threats with tense, fragile ceasefires and skirmishes along its borders. It really is a challenge on multiple fronts.
So, when you step back and look at all of this together, what does it all mean? It means India's future is literally hanging in the balance, being decided by how it navigates this collision of crises.
Ultimately, what we've seen is that all these fundamental pillars of a country, food security, public health, the economy, the energy grid, and even national security, they're not separate. They're all woven together. You pull too hard on one thread, and the whole fabric can start to unravel.
And this leaves us with the big final question. And honestly, it's a question not just for India, but for any nation facing this kind of modern-day perfect storm. When so many of your critical systems are being tested all at once, how do you actually forge a future that's strong enough to withstand the shock?